The following program is a work of satire and is intended for entertainment purposes only. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, places, buildings, or products is intended or should be inferred.
Ain't got no boundaries to hold me back. Boundaries is what I lack. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Conflation Station. Hop on board the next train out, and let's take a ride to a place where anything's possible.
Hello and welcome to the Conflation Station. My name is Hugo Yorway and I'll be your tour guide for today's podcast, including political commentary, conspiracy theories, and some cool music composed by E. Dude X and performed by the inimitable Electric Love Orchestra. At the Conflation Station, our team of creative writers and novice journalists combine elements of irony, satire, and pure absurdity to create insightful political commentary and homespun conflated conspiracy theories that are taken from today's news headlines. Since today's news stories are filled with so much misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, and in a world where fake news is generated by artificially intelligent robots, whether you believe it or not, anything you hear reported in the news today might just as well be a work of fiction. To the contrary, here at the Conflation Station, you can always count on us as your most trusted news source because we exercise the utmost journalistic accuracy, integrity, and balanced reporting. This week's podcast features an in-depth look at the state of mental health in America. While the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, under the grossly incompetent leadership of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is working around the clock to the detriment of the health and well-being of Americans by creating programs to roll back vaccination requirements for vulnerable infants, promoting plans to fuel a new nationwide measles epidemic, and creating a false narrative around the cause for autism, the nation's mental health crisis has been placed on a back burner with the pilot light turned off. Since Donald Trump began his second term in office, the state of mental health in America has taken a very steep and deeply concerning decline. Given Trump's executive orders to exit from the World Health Organization, make sharp cuts in staff at the Center for Disease Control, and increase healthcare costs for millions of vulnerable Americans, Americans have become increasingly ill, and mental illness now stands alone at the top of the list. Americans are now experiencing what both economists and scientists are calling the next Great Depression. However, unlike the Great Depression of the 1930s, which resulted in the collapse of America's financial institutions, in the 2020s, the term depression literally refers to the clinical psychological depression and its related symptoms Americans are experiencing every day under President Trump's fascist regime. According to Dr. Ramaswamy Viswanathan, president of the American Psychiatric Association, reported cases of mental illness have more than tripled since Trump began his second term in office. Viswanathan said, quote, President Trump's regime has terrorized Americans, causing them to experience unprecedented levels of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty in their daily lives. When people fear for their survival, they become mentally unstable and more likely to suffer from serious mental illness. We currently have a mental illness crisis in this country, and President Trump needs to take responsibility for it. End quote. To the contrary, President Trump, despite his deep cognitive decline and worsening dementia, continues to maintain that because he, in his own mind, is, quote, a stable genius, he is responsible for restoring high levels of stability to America in the aftermath of the Biden administration. During his second term in office, President Trump has continued to utilize bullying tactics and threats to intimidate major universities, giant law firms, global media outlets, and last but not least, the public at large, particularly the residents of Minneapolis, by demanding compliance with his own self-serving political agenda in service of his own personal greed. Trump's threats have caused widespread panic, not only in America, but amongst America's allies and business partners around the globe. For example, Trump eliminated the USAID program, which provided food relief and medical supplies and services to many third world countries. In a recent post on Truth Social, Trump said, quote, "You can't lead without creating widespread fear. Fear is the best motivator possible. Fear is not partisan. It is not red or blue. It is something all people understand. That's how how I achieve my goals." End quote. Accordingly, because we at the Conflation Station believe in a balanced approach to our reporting, we asked one of our most experienced and most senior political commentators, the Reverend Rusty Stubblefield, to reach out to Johnny Knoxville, host of the popular reality show Fear Factor, for an interview. Knoxville is recognized as one of the nation's leading experts on the subject of fear. When Rusty spoke to Knoxville said, quote, "Man has not experienced this degree of mental trauma and stress since Neanderthals walked on this here planet centuries ago in fear of being attacked by dinosaurs." Knoxville said that he recently asked his producer Matt Kunitz if the show could find a T-Rex for a cameo appearance on a Fear Factor episode to prove his point. Mr. Kunitz said he was strongly in favor of the idea and would ask film director Steven Spielberg, the producer of Jurassic Park, if they could lend the show a T-Rex for a day. At the moment, Mr. Kunitz is waiting to hear back from Mr. Spielberg. And now, let's take a quick musical break to enjoy the first of two musical experiments written by America's favorite songwriter and world-renowned composer, E. Dude X. This week, E. Dude X has been in the studio composing music for a very unique and ancient Chinese stringed instrument called the eru. E. Dude X says he is impressed with the instrument's capability of producing a very expressive vibrato. The eru is played by world-renowned master Jackie Fu. That's spelled F-U, not F-O-O, for those of you who are interested in obtaining some of his other recordings. Today, Mr. Fu's masterful playing is supported by none other than the inimitable Electric Love Orchestra. This piece is entitled Ham Sandwich. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Thank you, E. Dude X and the Electric Love Orchestra, for that life-altering musical experiment. Remember, the Electric Love Orchestra's complete catalog is available online at Bearberry Path Music. Picking up on where we just left off, based on a report recently released this week by Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, America's mental health crisis has reached epidemic proportions. Teen suicide is up, addiction to prescription antipsychotic drugs is up, and paranoia is widespread amongst all age groups, including those individuals who have real enemies. According to the Surgeon General's report, since President Trump began his second term, new forms of highly contagious and fatal mental illnesses are being discovered each week. While most Americans have become familiar with the term Trump derangement syndrome, a form of psychosis associated with liberal Democrats, there is a new and even more lethal strain of mental illness directly linked to President Trump's first year in office. It is known as intractable trauma, otherwise abbreviated as IT, and pronounced IT for short. The Surgeon General's report states that Somalis living in the Minneapolis metropolitan area between the ages of 18 and 62 have seen a 242% increase in the number of IT cases reported since 2,000 federal ICE agents stormed Minneapolis and began their occupation of the city approximately 2 weeks ago. The outbreak in Minneapolis surged after Ilhan Omar, a liberal congresswoman from Minnesota, was attacked on stage at one of her town halls last week. Persons stricken by it may experience a combination of at least two of the following symptoms: frequent nightmares, overwhelming anxiety, intrusive thoughts, high arousal response, cognitive dissonance, suicidal ideation, anhedonic behavior, sudden weight gain or loss, conceptual conflict, and/or watershed moments. The CDC has advised any individual who is experiencing symptoms of it to report it to their local Board of Health and to seek help from a licensed mental health professional to nip it in the bud. In the first stages of it, the body goes into strange rhythmic dance-like contortions. This has been witnessed in clinical observations within the Somali community. If left untreated, it can result in female infertility and male impotence. Needless to say, the point is to take care of it before it takes care of you. And now it's time for another short musical experiment by Dudex featuring Jackie Fu, that's F-U, on the eru. The piece is an arrangement of an ancient Chinese folk song entitled Waltz of the Wilted Flowers. Stay tuned and we'll be right back with the remainder of today's podcast. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again, Dudex, Jackie Fu, and the gang of the Electric Love Orchestra for taking a musical risk. Just in, this past weekend, emergency rooms in Asbury Park, New Jersey were flooded with patients reporting intractable trauma symptoms. All of the cases had one thing in common. Just prior to seeking medical attention, each patient listened to Bruce Springsteen's new release, The Streets of Minneapolis, shortly before manifesting the strange bodily contortions associated with it. Many patients arrived at the ER twisted like pretzels before they were untangled. While most patients were released and referred for follow-up psychological evaluations, 3 men, aged 67, 69, and 70, remain hospitalized and in critical condition. There was one fatality. The 3 men in critical condition are being treated for excessive earwax. Doctors at the Asbury Park Medical Center speculate that the earwax developed to form a protective coat inside a listener's outer ear to block the sound of Springsteen's singing. When asked about the 3 patients in critical condition, ER physician Dr. Isaac Isaacs said, quote, "It is common for patients who experience it to develop enormous pockets of earwax as a barrier in their outer ears to protect against foreign vocal sounds that are annoying, irritating, and out of tune. For example, Donald Trump's voice meets this description. Bruce Springsteen's voice also meets all of these same criteria." End quote. The CDC is now recommending that in order to avoid developing it or experiencing complications from it, people should either not listen to Bruce Springsteen's music or wear earplugs or noise-canceling headphones when doing so. The deceased, a woman aged 66, was reported to have been listening to Bruce Springsteen's greatest hits moments before she passed. Finally, in a completely unrelated story, in case you missed it, the Conflation Station is the only national news media outlet reporting that this past Sunday, February 1st, ICE agents arrested America's most well-known and respected groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil, and placed him in a federal detention center. Phil was found in the woods without any identification papers to document that he is in fact a United States citizen. He was charged with depriving a group of wild turkeys their right to freely assemble in a cornfield. When asked about Phil's capture, President Trump said, quote, "Punxsutawney Phil is a radical, liberal, climate change-promoting Democrat tree hugger who should be behind bars," end quote. Rather than cancel Groundhog Day, Punxsutawney town officials used an AI-generated groundhog to replace Phil. The end result was the same: 6 more weeks of winter.
Well, we've reached our destination. We'll be back next week to pick you up for yet another journey to and from the Conflation Station.